During the weekly wrap-up, the new intern suddenly switched the projector to my attendance record. The eyes of the CEO and the entire company locked onto me in an instant. The intern, Madison, tilted her chin up with a smug grin and slammed a stack of photos onto the mahogany conference table. Nate, I'm reporting her. She's been using the company's luxury vehicle to pick up her kid every single day. It's a blatant misuse of company assets for personal gain. I move for immediate termination. Nate's face turned as dark as a thundercloud. I looked at this ambitious intern with a flicker of genuine pity. She was so desperate to climb the ladder that she hadn't noticed the rungs were made of glass. The company car she was referring to? That was my Rolls-Royce Cullinan. A $300,000 piece of machinery. For the sake of closing deals and keeping the firm's image afloat, I had let the company use it for free for 2 whole years. The silence in the room was absolute, the kind of heavy quiet that comes right before a storm. The central AC hummed at a steady 68 degrees, but a chill still crept into my bones. It had nothing to do with the temperature. It was the coldness of human nature. In the photos, the black Cullinan gleamed under the streetlights, parked in front of an elite private preschool. The angles were sharp, intentional, capturing me leaning down to lift my daughter into my arms, the last 4 digits of the license plate clearly visible. Madison braced both hands on the table. Her young face glowed with the misplaced zeal of a corporate crusader. She looked at me as if I were a thief caught in the vault. Nate, according to the employee handbook, company vehicles are strictly for business use. As a senior executive, Miss Mercer shouldn't just be setting an example. She should be the standard. Instead, she's turned our most expensive client-facing asset into her personal nanny cam on wheels. School runs, grocery trips, weekend errands. It's all here. Her voice was crisp and sharp, echoing off the glass walls. Then she clicked to the next slide. It was an Excel spreadsheet. I did the math. Between the commute and the school runs, she's putting an extra 25 miles on the odometer every day. Between the fuel consumption of AV12 and the depreciation, we're looking at thousands in hidden costs every month. And that's not even counting the driver's billable hours. She's stealing from the company. I stared at the spreadsheet, then at Madison. She thought she had found a scandal. What she had really found was a fuse. Nathaniel Cross had been my college classmate. Back in the early days, when he couldn't even cover payroll, I was the one who dipped into my savings to keep the lights on. Later, when we needed to project an image of success to land bigger clients, my old BMW didn't cut it. So I brought in the Cullinan I had bought for myself as a 35th birthday present. I had owned it for less than a month. Take it, I told him back then. Use it. We need clients to see we're already in their league. A temporary favor lasted 2 years. I paid for the gas. I paid the insurance premiums. I paid for the maintenance. Sometimes, when the driver was overwhelmed, I even drove to JFK myself to pick up VIPs. Everyone in that building knew that car was mine. Or at least they should have. But when I looked at Nate now, there was no defense in his eyes. His brow was furrowed, his fingers drumming rhythmically on the table. A nervous habit. He always did that when he was weighing his own interests against someone else's. Diana, Nate finally said, his voice low and professional in a way that felt like a slap. The evidence Madison provided. Is it true? I stared at him. Is it true? 2 years ago, when he begged me for the car so he could save face in front of a client, he'd said, Diana, I'm so sorry to ask this. As soon as we're in the black, I'll buy you a brand new one. 1 year ago, when cash flow dried up, he used that same car as collateral for a bridge loan so he could make payroll. He told me then, Diana, this car is the company's lifeline. It's your badge of honor. And now he was asking me if it was true. I scanned the room. George, the sales manager, had used that very car last week to pick up his mother-in-law from the hospital and had bragged about it on Instagram as one of the company perks. Now he kept his head down, intently studying his legal pad. Sarah from HR, who asked for the keys every other month to run supplies, but really just wanted to cruise around with her boyfriend, was looking at me with a sneer, as if I were some white-collar criminal. It turns out that in the face of profit, kindness isn't just cheap. It's invisible. What do you think, Nate? I asked. My voice came out calmer than I expected. Nate avoided my gaze. The photos speak for themselves. Diana, you've been with us since the beginning, and we're friends, but policy is policy. We have to separate the personal from the professional. That's a fundamental principle. He paused, then settled into the tone of a man pretending morality while calculating gain. Here's how we'll handle this. You'll hand over the keys immediately. From now on, the vehicle will be managed strictly by the administration department. Additionally, the finance team will calculate the fuel and depreciation costs Madison outlined and deduct them from your next paycheck. Madison's lips curled into a triumphant smile. Thank you, Nate. That's very fair. Also, I think a formal apology in front of the whole staff is necessary. This kind of behavior rots company culture. Nate hesitated, glanced at me once, then nodded. We'll skip the speech. A company-wide memo detailing the disciplinary action will suffice. Company-wide memo. Docked pay. Confiscation of my own keys. I looked at Nate's familiar face and realized I didn't recognize him at all. It was my car. But I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't reach into my bag, pull out the title, and throw it in his face. Because I saw the naked ambition in Madison's eyes. And I saw the calculated greed in Nate's. She wanted to use me as a stepping stone. He wanted to seize the chance to finally claim the company limo as his own, permanently turning my generosity into his asset. 2 years is a long time. Long enough for people to develop the delusion that what they've been allowed to use actually belongs to them. Fine, I said. I stood up, reached into my bag, and pulled out the heavy leather key fob. Then I set it down gently on the conference table. The thud it made was small, but it felt like a gavel coming down. There are the keys. But skip the memo. I looked at Nate, a slight knowing smile touching my lips. I hope this car brings the company all the luck it deserves. Nate clearly hadn't expected me to fold so easily. Relief flashed across his face, followed quickly by greed. I'm glad you understand, Diana. It's for the good of the firm. Madison snatched the keys off the table as if she'd just won a prize. See? If you'd just been honest from the start, it wouldn't have come to this. I looked at her with nothing but pity. She had no idea what she was holding. She thought she had seized power. In reality, she had just grabbed a live grenade. The memo hit everyone's inbox 30 minutes later. The subject line was a serrated blade. Disciplinary notice regarding misuse of corporate assets, Diana Mercer. It detailed my supposed crimes with surgical precision. The long-term unauthorized use of the firm's flagship Cullinan for personal errands. Child pickup. Shopping trips. Conduct unbecoming of leadership. I sat in my office listening to the murmurs drift over the cubicle walls. Unbelievable. She always acted so high and mighty. A Cullinan? That's a $400,000 car. She used it like a minivan. Madison really did us a favor. It's about time someone cleaned house. I took a sip of my coffee. The bitterness coated my tongue, but it couldn't touch the cold in my chest. Then my office door swung open without a knock. Madison marched in holding a clipboard. Diana, finance finished the audit. Based on the mileage logs over the last 24 months, you owe the company $128,000 in fuel, maintenance, and depreciation. She slapped the paper onto my desk and loomed over me. Nate already signed off on it. You have 3 days to settle the balance or it'll be liquidated from your year-end bonus and equity dividends. I picked up the sheet and scanned the numbers. They were absurdly thorough. They had even counted the miles I drove to the dealership for the car's scheduled maintenance as personal use. 128,000? I said, amused. You're quite the mathematician, Madison. I'm efficient, she snapped. I know you're bitter, Diana, but these are the rules. You enjoyed a lifestyle you didn't pay for. Now the bill is due. Enjoyed. I leaned back in my chair and looked her dead in the eye. Do you have any idea what the insurance on that car costs annually? Madison hesitated. The company pays it, obviously. No, I do. $50,000 a year. And the maintenance? Also me. Over 10 grand every service. Her confidence wavered. Well, that was your choice. You're the one who drove it. Do you even know who brought that car into this office 2 years ago? She waved a dismissive hand. Who cares? It belongs to the company now. Don't try to deflect. Pay the money. Belongs to the company now. That line almost made me laugh. The keys are in my possession now, Madison continued. If you need a car for work, you'll have to submit a formal request form. I'll be the one approving it. And in turn, one who had been here less than 90 days, was now going to approve travel requests for the operations director. The sheer absurdity of it would have been funny if it weren't so revealing. Understood, I said. I picked up a pen and signed the acknowledgement slip with a flourish. Madison snatched the paper from my desk, her expression glowing with triumph. Smart move. Oh, and Nate told me to tell you we have a massive client coming in next Monday. He specifically requested the Cullinan for transport. Make sure you clear out all your personal junk. I don't want the client seeing car seats or teething toys. It's embarrassing for the firm. I agreed so quickly that it startled her. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking against the floor like a victory drum. I watched her go, then pulled out my phone. My bank balance was more than enough. Then I dialed the number saved under legal. Hey, Robert. It's Diana Mercer. Yes, I need to consult on a few things. Illegal seizure of private property, back payment of unauthorized expenses, and potential fraud. I have everything. Every wire transfer, every service receipt, every insurance binder from the last 2 years. All in my name. After I hung up, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a thick manila folder. The original sales contract. The title. The tax certification. And there, in bold ink beneath registered owner, were 2 beautiful words. Diana Mercer. 2 years ago, Nate had offered to sign a lease agreement, $20,000 a month. I told him not to worry about it. We're partners. Keep the cash in the business until we're stable. We never put anything in writing. At the time, I thought it was loyalty. Now I understood the truth. It was simply a weapon I had placed in his hands, trusting he'd never turn it against me. If they wanted to play by the book, then fine. We would count every penny. I walked down to the executive garage. The Cullinan was parked in the CEO's reserved spot. Madison was there, directing 2 junior assistants as they swarmed the car. Throw those floor mats out. They're hideous, she barked. And that charm hanging from the mirror? Toss it. It looks like a kindergarten project. Check the trunk too. Clear out any personal boxes. We don't want her private clutter in here. The hideous mats were custom-ordered leather worth $800. The charm was a lucky tassel my daughter had made for me by hand. The boxes in the trunk contained luxury gift sets I had personally paid for our upcoming client gala. I stood behind a concrete pillar and watched them like a hawk observing mice in a maze. Madison had a trash bag in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Those boxes too, she said. Nate wants the entire interior professionally detailed by tomorrow morning. We can't have it smelling like cheap perfume or whatever she sprays in there. One of the junior assistants, a nervous kid named Leo who had started 2 weeks earlier, hesitated as he picked up one of the velvet-lined boxes. Madison, these look like the reserve gifts for the Sterling account. Clear it out, Leo. If it was in her possession, it's compromised. Box it up and leave it by the dumpsters. Maintenance will handle it. I slipped my phone from my pocket, opened the camera, and hit record. I made sure to capture the license plate, Madison's face, and Leo holding the gift boxes I had personally bought for $8,000. When Madison reached for the rearview mirror to yank down my daughter's crooked little red yarn star, I finally stepped out from the shadows. I'll take that. My voice echoed through the concrete garage. All 3 of them jumped. Madison spun around, guilt flashing across her face for a fraction of a second before arrogance settled back over it like cheap foundation. Diana, shouldn't you be packing your desk or figuring out how to pay back the money you stole? I ignored her. I walked to the open driver's side door, reached in, and gently unhooked the yarn star from the mirror. Then I slipped it into my blazer pocket. Those floor mats, I said, pointing to the pile of leather tossed onto the oily concrete, are stained now. Add them to the list of things you're throwing away. But I'll be taking the Sterling client gifts. Unless you want to explain to Nate why you threw away $8 grand in scotch. Madison crossed her arms. Take them. We're replacing everything anyway. Just don't scratch the paint on your way out. The company needs this car in pristine condition for Mr. Sterling. I turned and looked at the gleaming black body of the Cullinan. Oh, I wouldn't dream of scratching it, I said softly. Then I picked up the boxes and walked away. By 4 o'clock, my office was packed into 3 neat cardboard boxes. I hadn't technically been fired, but after that memo, sitting in my glass-walled office while the floor whispered about me was a waste of time. I had bigger plans. I took a cab to the financial district. Robert's office occupied the 40th floor of a high-rise that smelled like old mahogany and new money. He had been my attorney for a decade. He handled my divorce, my investments, and the purchase of the Cullinan. I dropped the manila folder onto his desk. They want $128,000 by Friday, and they kept the car. Robert, whose resting expression had always suggested irritation with the entire human race, opened the folder and reviewed the disciplinary memo first. Then he looked at the original title bearing my name. Diana, please tell me you didn't agree to pay this. I signed the acknowledgement, I said, settling into the guest chair. And I plan to wire the money tomorrow morning. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Why? Because right now Nate thinks he's recovering lost operational costs. But the moment I wire that money, this stops being an internal HR dispute. Robert went still. Then a slow grin spread across his face. What does it become? I asked. Wire fraud, he said. Extortion under color of employment. Conversion of property. Potential grand theft auto. They forced you to pay for the use of your own property under threat of financial penalty and public defamation. If the wire crosses state lines, it escalates. Exactly. I took a sip of the sparkling water his paralegal had placed beside me. Nate is desperate. The company's cash reserves are bleeding. That's why he didn't just take the car. He needed cash. He used this intern's fake audit as a smokescreen to rob me and make payroll. And the car. They're using it to impress Arthur Sterling on Monday. A $50 million account. Nate thinks landing Sterling will save the firm. Robert tapped his pen against the desk. I can file an injunction tomorrow and have the vehicle impounded. No, I said. Impounding it tomorrow would be a nuisance. I want maximum damage. I want Nate to feel exactly the humiliation he tried to bury me in. Robert leaned back. You always were terrifying. I learned from the best. By the time I left Robert's office, we had a plan. On Monday morning, Robert would file the civil suit. Defamation. Fraud. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Conversion of property. He would also notify the district attorney's office and ensure law enforcement had everything necessary to act immediately. The weekend was blissfully quiet. I spent it with my daughter, Mia. We went to the zoo, ate too much ice cream, and fed giraffes with sticky fingers and bad judgment. I didn't check my company email once. A few coworkers texted me. Most were silent cowards masquerading as concerned observers. A few sent half-hearted apologies. Only Tom from IT sent me something useful. Tom, this feels like a setup. Nate had me pull your keycard access logs last night. If you need any data backed up, tell me now. Me, I'm good. But do me a favor. Back up the executive garage footage from Friday afternoon to a secure offshore server, just in case it accidentally gets deleted. Tom, done. Me, see you Monday. Tom, wouldn't miss it. Monday morning arrived crisp and cold. I dressed carefully, tailored charcoal suit, severe low chignon, not a single hair out of place. I was not dressing like a victim. I was dressing like an executioner. When I stepped onto the executive floor, the silence was immediate. Keyboards stopped clacking. Conversations died mid-sentence. Sarah from HR suddenly found her coffee fascinating. George, the sales manager, practically disappeared into a supply closet. I walked calmly to my office. The glass walls gave me a perfect view of the boardroom across the hall. At 9:45, the elevator chimed. Nate stepped out first, wearing the bright, overeager smile of a man who thought he had finally outrun disaster. Beside him was Arthur Sterling. Sterling was older, rich in the quiet, dangerous way old money tends to be. Sharp eyes. Impeccable tweed suit. The kind of man who missed absolutely nothing. Trailing behind them was Madison, parading around in a pencil skirt and self-importance. Right this way, Arthur, Nate said. I trust the ride from the airport was comfortable. Very, Sterling replied. Beautiful vehicle. A Cullinan, if I'm not mistaken. I have a Phantom in London. Shows the firm is doing well. I like partners who invest in quality. Nate laughed too quickly. Absolutely. We spare no expense for our top-tier clients. Madison beamed. I personally oversaw the detailing this weekend, Mr. Sterling. I watched them file into the boardroom. Then my desk phone rang. It was Nate's assistant. Diana? Nate wants you in the boardroom. He needs you to present the Q3 operational projections for Mr. Sterling. Of course he did. Nate liked to call himself a visionary, which was just a polished way of saying he was useless at actual logistics. He needed my brain to close the deal, even after trying to humiliate me in front of the entire company. The audacity was almost elegant. I'll be right there, I said. I picked up my tablet and crossed the hall. The moment I entered, Nate gave me a warning look that said everything. Play along. Arthur, this is Diana Mercer, Nate said smoothly. Our director of operations. She'll walk you through the integration timeline. Arthur Sterling rose slightly and extended his hand. A pleasure, Miss Mercer. Nathaniel speaks highly of your efficiency. I shook his hand firmly. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Sterling. Let's get right into the numbers. For the next 40 minutes, I owned the room. I laid out the operational strategy with precision. Supply chain contingencies, labor allocation, vendor redundancies, cost control forecasts. I answered every question before Sterling had to ask it twice. Nate sat back, nodding along, trying to look as if he had orchestrated my brilliance. Madison passed out bottled waters near the wall, her earlier swagger reduced to glorified office decor. Finally, Sterling leaned back in his chair and tapped his pen once against the table. Outstanding. Very thorough, Diana. I must say, Nate, you have a solid engine running the ship. The optics of your success, the office, the operations, the Rolls-Royce downstairs, it all aligns with the data. I'm prepared to sign the letter of intent today. Nate visibly sagged with relief. You won't regret it. Madison, he barked, print the LOI immediately. Right away. She turned toward the door. And then the heavy glass doors swung open. Robert stood there. He was flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. Behind them, craning their necks from the bullpen outside, stood half the office. Nate pushed back from the table. "Excuse me. This is a private meeting. Who are you?" Robert didn't even glance at him. He nodded toward the officers. "That's Nathaniel Cross. And the young woman by the door is Madison Hayes." One of the officers stepped forward. "Mr. Cross, we have a warrant for your arrest, as well as an impound order for a stolen vehicle parked in the executive garage." No one moved. No one breathed. The same suffocating silence from Friday had returned. Only this time, it wasn't aimed at me. "Arrest?" Nate sputtered, his face blotching red. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding. The only vehicle in the garage is a company-owned Rolls-Royce. My intern manages the logs." Madison went pale. I just did the audit. I don't know anything about a stolen car." Arthur Sterling frowned and looked between them. "Nathaniel, what on earth is going on?" I rose slowly, straightened my blazer, and walked over to Robert. He handed me a thick stack of stapled documents. "There's no misunderstanding, officer," I said, my voice carrying cleanly through the boardroom and into the stunned bullpen outside. "On Friday, Mr. Cross and Ms. Hayes confiscated the keys to a 2023 Rolls-Royce Cullinan. They threatened to terminate my employment and strip my equity if I did not surrender the vehicle." Nate laughed once, too sharply. "Because it belongs to the company. Diana, you were embezzling company miles." "Arthur, I apologize. A disgruntled employee is trying to make a scene." I dropped the papers onto the table directly in front of him. "That is the original title, Nate. Pulled from the DMV this morning. That is the bill of sale. Those are the insurance binders for the last 24 months. His eyes landed on the bold print under registered owner, Diana Mercer. I watched the exact second his world collapsed. His jaw slackened. Color drained from his face. He looked up at me as if I had transformed into something he had never properly understood. "Diana," he whispered. "What?" "I told you I was letting you use it," I said. 2 years ago, when you were begging for a bridge loan and crying in my office because you couldn't land a client in your beat-up BMW, I bought that car. I let you parade it around to save your ego. We never signed a lease. We never transferred the title. You set me up." Nate shouted, slamming both hands on the table. "No," I said coldly. "You set yourself up." I turned slightly. "Robert, did the wire transfer clear this morning?" It did. He produced the bank confirmation from his briefcase. At 8 a.m., my client wired $128,000 to the corporate account of Cross Logistics. She was ordered to do so under threat of termination in a company-wide memo sent by Ms. Hayes and approved by Mr. Cross. Robert looked at the officers. Forcing a person to pay for the use of her own property under threat of financial ruin constitutes felony extortion. The interstate wire transfer triggers wire fraud. Refusing her access to the vehicle is grand theft. Madison made a sound halfway between a sob and a gasp. The room exploded. "I didn't know." Madison cried. "He told me it was the company's. He told me to calculate the miles." Then, in her panic, she made the fatal mistake. She pointed directly at Nate. "He needed the money. He said if we didn't get cash by the end of the month, we couldn't make payroll." A collective gasp swept through the office outside the boardroom. The open secret of the company's financial decay had just been shouted into the air by the intern who thought she was about to become a vice president. Arthur Sterling stood slowly. He buttoned his tweed jacket with measured calm. He didn't look angry. He looked disgusted. "Arthur, please," Nate said, turning toward him. "This is a misunderstanding. A clerical error. If you sign the letter of intent, I can clear all this up." "Sign the letter of intent?" Sterling repeated, his voice low and razor thin. "You invited me here to impress me with a car you stole from your own executive. You lied about your firm's financial health. You attempted to extort one of your own people for cash." He stepped closer to the table. "You are a fraud, Nathaniel. And worse, you are remarkably stupid." Then he turned to me. "Ms. Mercer, I apologize for taking up your morning. You clearly have a first-rate operational mind. If you ever find yourself at a firm that actually owns its assets, give my office a call." "I will, Mr. Sterling. Thank you." He walked out through the party crowd of employees without another glance back. With him went $50 million and the last real chance Cross Logistics had of surviving the quarter. The lead officer stepped toward Nate and pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Nathaniel Cross, turn around and place your hands behind your back." Nate didn't fight. He just stared at me with hollow eyes as the cuffs clicked shut. The second officer moved toward Madison. "Madison Hayes, you need to come with us as well." "No," she shrieked, stumbling backward. "I'm just an intern. I've only been here 3 months. You can't arrest me. I was following orders." Then she turned to me in a final burst of delusion. "Diana, tell them. Tell them I was just doing my job." I looked at her. Her smug smile was gone. In its place was the wild panic of someone who had finally discovered that actions have consequences. "Your job," I said quietly, stepping close enough that only she could hear me, "was to learn the business. Instead, you tried to climb over my back." Her eyes filled with tears. "I told you the rungs of your ladder were made of glass. Did you enjoy the fall?" I asked. The officer took her arm and turned her around. Madison sobbed openly as the handcuffs clicked into place. Outside the boardroom, the entire floor had frozen into a tableau of shock. Sarah from HR was already recording on her phone. George looked like he might faint. Robert closed his briefcase with a satisfied snap. "I'll have a team of auditors in here by tomorrow to retrieve your $128,000, Diana. Though, given the state of the company's finances, we may end up seizing servers and office furniture to cover it." "Take it all," I said. "Burn it to the studs." I walked out of the boardroom. The bullpen was silent. 70 people watched as I returned to my office, picked up my 3 cardboard boxes, and headed for the elevator. Tom from IT was waiting by the doors. He swiped his master badge and called the elevator for me. "Servers are backed up," he said quietly. "And I locked Nate out of the administrative controls, just in case he tries to delete anything from a holding cell." I smiled for the first time all day. "You're a good man, Tom." The elevator doors slid open. Polish up your resume, I told him as I stepped inside. I'll be calling you in a few weeks. His eyebrows rose. Then he grinned. I was hoping you'd say that. The doors closed. Only then, for the first time since Friday, did I let myself breathe. I had not screamed. I had not begged. I had not fought in the moment they expected me to. I had simply stepped aside and let greedy people walk directly into the trap they built with their own hands. That was the thing about entitlement. It makes people sloppy, and desperation makes them stupid. Together, they are devastating. Especially when the woman they tried to humiliate knows exactly how to wait. The fall of Cross Logistics was swift and spectacular. Once news of Nate's arrest hit the trade publications, major clients started pulling contracts within hours. The bank called in its loans. Vendors demanded payment upfront. The board, such as it was, disintegrated into finger-pointing and panic. The company folded in less than 30 days. Nate made bail, but only barely. His assets were frozen. His penthouse was foreclosed. Last I heard, he was living in a cramped studio in Queens while awaiting federal trial for wire fraud, extortion, and theft-related charges. The man who once strutted through Manhattan in my Rolls-Royce now rode the subway with a public defender. Madison cut a plea deal. She flipped on Nate, testified that he directed her to fabricate the audit, and avoided prison time by cooperating early. She still walked away with a felony conviction. A quick search showed her LinkedIn had vanished. Good luck building a corporate career with fraud on your record. As for the rest of the company, people scattered fast. Some found jobs. Some didn't. Some tried to reach out to me with awkward messages about how they had always respected my leadership. I didn't reply. Respect that only appears after the smoke clears is just fear wearing a cleaner outfit. Robert recovered the $128,000 for me, though not without blood in the water. By the time the dust settled, Cross Logistics had been stripped for parts. Servers, office furniture, receivables, even artwork from the lobby. I didn't care. The money mattered less than the lesson. People always talk about betrayal as if it arrives with thunder. It doesn't. Most of the time, betrayal arrives wearing a familiar face, using your own kindness as leverage. And when it comes, the damage isn't in what it takes. It's in what it reveals. Friday had revealed every single person in that building for exactly who they were. That knowledge was expensive. But in the end, worth every cent. I took Arthur Sterling up on his offer. I didn't join a firm. I built my own. Sterling Seed Capital provided the initial backing, and with that foundation, I launched Mercer Operations Group. Within 2 months, I had recruited some of the best talent from the ashes of Cross Logistics, including Tom from IT, who became my chief technology officer. Unlike Nate, I knew exactly who kept a business alive, and it was never the loudest man in the room. It was the people who knew how things actually worked. The company grew faster than even I expected. Clients liked competence. Investors liked discipline. Teams liked leaders who didn't mistake generosity for weakness. Funny how easy business becomes when no one is stealing the tires off the car while smiling through a quarterly forecast. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn Tuesday, I stepped out of my new high-rise office near Central Park. The doorman tipped his hat. "Car's ready, Miss Mercer." I walked to the curb. Idling there, polished to a dark mirror shine, was the black Rolls-Royce Cullinan. My Cullinan. Freshly detailed. The custom leather mats had been reinstalled. The interior smelled like cedar, leather, and victory. Hanging from the rearview mirror, swaying gently, was the slightly crooked red yarn star my daughter had made with her tiny hands. The driver, a polite young man named David, stepped out and opened the rear door for me. "Where to, ma'am?" I smiled as I slipped into the plush backseat. "To the elite preschool." David nodded and closed the door. Outside, the city gleamed. Inside, everything was quiet, warm, and exactly where it belonged. For the first time in a long time, the silence felt like peace instead of pressure. As the car eased into traffic, I looked out at the city and thought about how much can change in 6 months. A company can collapse. A reputation can be restored. A coward can lose everything. And a woman everyone underestimated can build something bigger from the ashes they left behind. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Tom. "Server migration complete. Also, your 3 o'clock investor call got moved to 3:30. I smiled and typed back. "Perfect. Thanks." A moment later, another message came in from Robert. "Update from the prosecutor's office. Nate's team wants to discuss a plea." I stared at the screen for a second, then locked my phone and set it aside. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not rage. Not even curiosity. Men like Nate always think the real punishment is the public fall. It isn't. The real punishment is surviving long enough to watch someone you tried to break become everything you were pretending to be. The car turned onto the quiet tree-lined street near Mia's school. Children in bright jackets spilled across the sidewalk like confetti. Parents waited at the gate. Teachers smiled. The late afternoon sunlight poured over the pavement in soft gold. David parked. He stepped out and opened my door. I gathered my coat, smoothed my sleeve, and climbed out. Then I saw her. Mia burst through the school doors with her backpack bouncing wildly behind her. The second she spotted me, her whole face lit up. "Mommy." She ran straight into my arms. I laughed and caught her, holding her close as she wrapped herself around my neck. Behind me, the Cullinan gleamed in the sun. Mine. Always mine. I kissed the top of my daughter's head and smiled. "Come on, sweetheart," I whispered. "Let's go home."